we'll go ahead and get started today. Trevor, you can start us off and then we'll introduce
Yeah,
Larry. Yeah.
yeah, definitely. Well, thank you everybody for coming and join. We're gonna plow through a lot of information, and we'll see if we can get it all to you. There may be some straggling bits that we can work with you afterward to help relay. We'll see how much of this we can get to you because it is good and it is dense, and Larry has so much to share, more than what could possibly fit in 1 hour webinar. So we are going to dive in here. So thanks for joining us again. This is our C-level pivots, and anybody that is a C-level pivots or executive pivot, you require top tier coaching, a very different kind of coaching. And Larry's going to go through a lot of that. Let me give everybody some quick perspective on who we are, where we are, what we are. We run a company called Onyx Unlocks. And within that umbrella, we have a whole host of support and strategic and directional and strengths providing of your teams and performance programs. So, in our Strengths to Strategy program, for example, this is where we'll step in with executives and their teams, and we will talk about, all right, what's the unified communication that isn't happening, or what are the unified goals, or what's the noise that needs out of the way, and how do we get a team performing at their actual top tier? And then in the middle of the screen there, executive pivots. That's a lot of what we're going to talk about today. This is where if somebody is either out of a C-level job or a VP or an SVP or a executive level job, and you're needing to pivot into something else, and you don't want to find yourself pigeonholed into the wrong direction and wrong avenue, and build this whole program and direction and go sprinting down the wrong road and find yourself where you actually despise your being. And also just the sheer amount of time it takes to get one of these positions, because some of you have noticed it's a tad competitive out there, and other people have coaching programs like what we offer, and you're going up against them, and it's brutal. Consultant go to market, if anybody is in the life season that they want to step into that self-employed realm and into that being a consultant realm, and how in the world do you drum up the first year and 2 years of your first $1 million of consultant income? Completely different creature, completely different skill set, and a completely different program to help you get into and through that program. A Rocket Leap program, if anybody is running a small business and they're wearing all the hats known to man and would love not to be the one wearing all the hats and doing all the everythings, we can guide and coach and teach that. And then the last two here, these are the platforms that we built our programs on. We've got Strengthology, and so we leverage a lot of the Gallup strengths measurement and assessment tools on a personal level, but even more than that, on a business and a team level, so that your folks that are just natural at having everybody included in a decision, they can, and they can help with that. And anybody that's just gifted and natural at plowing a mountain through, even if there is a little collateral damage, but now you have forward progress, they can. And there's so many strengths and gifts and talents of your people that you can take advantage of, that we help you see, recognize, call out, add some language to, and everybody can really feel seen and heard, and your team can thrive in a way that is not otherwise able to be done. And then Rapid Clarity, that's for the feedback loops, getting info and getting some very clean, clear feedback from either your staff or your clients, so that you know, am I actually even providing a service or a product that my clients want, or am I just trying to pitch something at them that they don't want? And then internally, is this how I keep happy employees and teams, and everybody actually has a voice, and maybe they don't like to speak up in a big public meeting, but you still need that feedback. So those are our platforms that we build our programs on. And then what we've built in that Executive Pivots program, we have built 4 zones with 8 different focuses on how does somebody land their new executive position. What does it actually take? In this case, what's the 8-foot gap that you have to jump so that you actually sign the paper and have the position? direction ready in the is it the right direction at all? Do you even want to do this? Is this what will actually make you happy long term? Or are you going to be switching a position in 2 years and you have that black ticky mark on your resume record? Being position ready, getting the story and the brand and the assets looking good, presence ready. Does your language line up with the brand and the story? Are you saying and highlighting all of the right differentiators? And then the conversion ready, how's that interview actually play out, go? And are we negotiating the best total compensation package for you during the offer? And I'm buzzing through that awful quick because I know Larry's going to go in quite a lot of depth on these programs. And so here's the playbook as a whole and all of the different components that we cover and go through when one goes through our entire program. Within that, here's our focuses for today. Here's what Larry's going to dig deeper into and help you with a little bit in each of the sections that hopefully genuinely you can come out of this today with usable, actual, tactical, tangible help and things you can employ and do for yourself. And then if you want and need a full program, great, reach out, talk to us, and we'll help you out with the complete and total, more like an 8-week type program and get you through the depths. But that is what we're hitting on today. So, Brandy, would you do us a favor and would you introduce Larry to the group since you guys have known each other for quite some time?
Yeah. So, Larry, thank you for being here this morning. I know that you and I have put a lot of hours into putting together some really good material for everyone who came to the presentation today. Larry and I have known each other for several years now. He's been helping me with the Executives in Transition program in Dallas, Fort Worth, which is a nonprofit. And he leads up our executive talent spotlights over there. And when I saw how the wonderful results that he was getting with these people just by working with them for 4 weeks, and how they were landing much faster than everybody else in the program, that's when I approached him and said, I'd really like you to join us at Executive Pivots and help me coach people through that program. And thank God he said yes. So he joined us over the last several months and has already been diving in helping people transition. And our goal, it can take anywhere from 12, but usually I would say 8 months to 24 months for executives to land on their own when they don't really know how to do it and they're just sort of out there fishing. But when they're working with Larry and myself, it's so shocking to still say it, but we get them to land within 4 to 6 months. And it's just because they're taking a more strategic approach to the job search and learning, all the things that that Larry and I have both learned. So I asked Larry, I said, can you please come give us a webinar and just tell us about all the things that usually stop people up where they get blocked. And then can you share with us how you actually help them get through that? And that would, help all of you guys who showed up today just learn from him of, maybe this is an area where I'm also, getting in my own way. And with Larry's advice, I can get out of my own way and make a lot of progress really fast. So Larry, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Oh, and by the way, Larry has a career as a leader in HR. So he gives us the perspective from the other side of being on the side of actually interviewing candidates for positions and placing them in organizations. He was at Texas Instruments for a long time doing that. So Larry, thank you so much for being here. We're so happy to have you, and take it away.
All right. Thank you very much, Brandy, and thank you very much, Trevor. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. So as was mentioned, there's a lot to cover, so I'm going to try to target about 40 minutes to get this done. So I'm going to start off with a couple of slides that will look familiar to the one that Trevor just showed you, that one right there. And then I'm going to spend about 25 minutes talking about 9 executive success stories. And the last 10 minutes will be Q&A. But feel free to interrupt me if you'd like as we go, because you may have questions as we go through the presentation. Okay, the first slides, this one is what you say. These are the comments that I typically hear, or we typically hear from executives. So starting with the 10 o'clock position over there in the yellow, I'm getting ghosted after interviews. I hear that all the time. I can't transition out of my industry. I have to stay in my lane and I want to get out. Number three, I'm too experienced. I've got 30 plus years of experience. I'm too expensive. It seems like companies want to hire younger professionals. Number four, I have gaps in my resume. It could be in the past or it could be in the last year or two. I don't have the current experience that they're looking for. They want manufacturing experience, but I had that like 7 years ago and they won't even talk to me. The job market is bad. It's stagnant. It's flat. So we hear that a lot. I don't have a strong network. In some cases, I hear they don't even have a network at all. The last two, I'm not getting any interviews, but I am getting the interviews, but I'm not getting any offers. And so I can't seem to come in first place and convert. So the next slide is what we see as consultants. So you see the quadrant, the zones, as Trevor called them, have been filled in. So up in your upper left-hand corner, needs direction means needs to clarify direction and differentiate. So you do need to stand out in the marketplace. In the upper right corner, needs to position means to strategically position professional brand and assets. So that gets into branding and it gets into your resume, your LinkedIn profile, et cetera. Lower right-hand corner needs presence. So you got to have concise communication and executive presence when networking. And the lower left-hand corner needs mastery of interviews and offer conversion. So I had a lot of executives who are getting tripped up on that last step because they're ready to cross the finish line and can't quite get over it. So going back up to the 10 o'clock position, not confident in who they are and what they want next. And so sometimes they'll say, what do you want to be? It's like, I want to be a manufacturing executive. I want to be quality. I want to be operations. I want to be supply chain management. I want to do it all. Well, companies don't really do that. They want you to think through where you want to lead and be more specific. And so you can't have your sandbox too big. Our companies don't know what to do with you. The next one, target roles are not aligned with the strengths. And so we'll have a story about one of those executives. The resume and LinkedIn are not aligned with the target roles. And so I can see, and we can see a disconnect pretty early in the process. Not sure how to contact hiring managers, particularly C-level executives. Most people have not been trained on how to write those kind of letters, and they haven't even seen any. How do you go about contacting a CEO and having a conversation? Moving on, limited or no network in the United States. I get that quite a bit. Probably worked with 3 or 4 executives had absolutely no U.S. network at all. And we have some in the U.S., but their networks are very limited because for many people, they've worked in positions for 25, 30 years, never had any interviews, didn't really need a super strong network. Moving on, not selected as a finalist in interviews. And so they can get up to the 4 finalists and maybe sometimes become the last 2 finalists, but they can't cross the finish line. Repeatedly coming in second place. And that's just very frustrating for most executives to keep coming in second place. Can't seem to get from an interview to an offer. So they can come in second place like 5 or 6 times, but what is it keeping them from getting first place? Because it only counts if you get first place, right? And then the last one is popped up here in the last couple of months, getting stuck on getting hired. The company wants to hire you, but they don't have a W-2 position approved because the headcount's not approved. So we'll get into other options like 1099s and consultants. Okay, so what your goals are, this chart shows where you may be today, starting with the 10 o'clock position again. You may have an unclear direction, and of course, what you want to get to is a clear direction. Number 2, you want to have aligned target roles and strengths. You want to make sure those are in sync with each other because that predicts success. Number 3, you want strong branded assets. You want a brand statement. You want your LinkedIn profile. You want your resume to be A+. You want certainty about how to contact hiring managers and how to go about the networking process of taking the lead and contacting hiring managers and executives so you can get interviews. Next, you want a thriving network. And so, 500 is kind of the threshold in LinkedIn. I've seen many executives with many less than 500. So that has to be changed over time. Then moving on, hiring manager interviews. And so some executives get stuck with screening interviews where they have lower level interviews, but the only one that counts is the hiring manager. And so that's very important. And then you want to become a finalist and get to first choice. Then you want to get the offer. You want it to be competitive. You want to have a good compensation package. And finally, you want to actually cross the finish line and get hired so you'll be on the payroll again. Okay. So now I'm going to move into the 9 executive success stories. So we're going to start with that first box, the yellow box in the upper left-hand corner. So this is the story of a HR executive, as it turns out. And this was fairly recent, just in the last 6 months. These are the questions that I typically start off with when I meet with executives. I see some of you in the audience here today. I probably use some of those questions. So what do you want to do? So I've had people say, well, I just want to cure cancer. It's like, okay, well, that's a good start. What would you like to do in the next 12 months? All sorts of things. I think I would like to lead operations. I would like to lead engineering, and I'd like to lead IT. Okay, all right, that's really good. Do you know of any companies that would be hiring for a position like that? No, you should know. You're the expert. Well, companies don't do that. So the first meeting is usually trying to figure out what it is, who you are, and where you want to go. And I usually do that at Starbucks because that's a great place to have those kind of conversations. And it's just an exploratory conversation and try to figure out where you're at. Also looking at where you've been in your job search, because many that I work with have been doing it for like 6 months or so, but they're just not making any progress. They get stuck. And so I ask a lot of these different questions, and I mean, it's just kind of a give and take. And we'll look at, have you ever seen any job titles on LinkedIn that really resonate with you? And well, I've seen some. So sometimes we will look on that. Sometimes we'll start off and look at the resume and just see what they currently have on their resume. So the purpose of all that is just to get a good feel for where the executive is at. Next slide. Okay, so the next step is to ask these 4 questions. These are 4 questions that are used for presentations to the business navigators. And so it's really, really helpful to find out, who are you? And in this case, in the HR executive, we probably spent 5 or 6, maybe 7 sessions just answering the first question, who are you? Because in many cases, we're not just an executive. I mean, we're a dad, we're a mother, we're a brother, sister. I mean, we have different relationships. And so, but when you're telling your story, the purpose of all this is to build a story about you so they really know who you are. And the second question there is 2 or 3 interesting personal stories. That really helps give a lot of color to people. So when you're telling your story, oh, you're that person. You've been over to the Far East. You've been over into many of the countries in Asia. You've been to South America. So you're big on culture. And so that really helps when you're interviewing for executive positions, because people find those stories very interesting. And then they list their impact that they've had in their career, 3 or 4 most impactful contributions they've made. And then also, what are their target positions? And it really helps when you're networking to tell people, I'm looking for a software company, I'm looking for a financial services company, I'm looking for a manufacturing company. I really like to play in mid-market or maybe small companies, like under 1,000 employees, revenue maybe 50 to 150 million. So when you give them those specs, it really helps them to really be in a position where they can help you come up with some suggestions for companies. And this is what she wrote. This is who she is. I've changed the name, but these are all her words. Most recently, she's the SVP of People and Culture at a global software company. That's number 1. And then the second paragraph, she says who she is. And what does she do? She helps companies scale by building people strategies that actually work. So she likes to work with not maybe startups, but companies that are rapidly expanding, growing revenue, trying to grow profit, and they're acquiring companies, they're having organic growth, but there's a lot of change, and that's what she really loves. And then A and B, she gives you a couple of examples of what her contributions were, and they're really generous with metrics. And so when you tell people contributions and you don't have metrics, they just kind of look the other way. But if you say, I've had 21 global acquisitions, I enable a 300% growth, what usually happens is, wow, that's really great. How did you do that? And so people get really energized by hearing those kind of numbers. And then in the next paragraph, she says what she's passionate about. That's always such a good word. And when she talks about this, you can hear her talk about it. I want to shift HR from being a cost center to a driver of growth, because that's the perception that a lot of HR leaders are just, leading a cost center. And I'm an HR leader myself. And so, I mean, that's a very common perception, but she wants to change that. And then at the end, she says what she's looking for is HR transformation. So that's an area within HR, global technology, private equity. She's even interested in private equity firms and high growth companies. And so she gives you some metrics down at the bottom, 50 million to 500 million, and between 100 and 1,500 employees. So anyway, I thought that was very well said. And she would use that when she was making introductions and networking meetings and anywhere she went. I did leave out the personal stories in there because that was used for the presentation for business navigators. So any questions on that? It was well done. Okay, we'll move on to number 2. This is a business development executive and illustrates. So Brandy and Trevor, if you'd like to chime in on this, you're much more knowledgeable than I am, but these are the 34 strengths that come from Strengthology. So for a business development executive, you'll notice up in the upper top, those are the 4 domains or areas. And so purple is executing, orange is influencing, blue is relationship building, and the strategic thinking is green. So what do you notice about the chart? You notice that there's a lot of green up at the top. In fact, all of the green is in the top 17, which would be the top 50%. What do you notice about the influencing? All of them are down at the bottom. His woo is 32. So he's not going to be in your face. He's not going to be a sales guy, and he's not going to be saying, hey, it's an amazing day today. This guy is never going to do that. Not likely. Relationship building, where's it at? They're almost all in the top 50%. And the strategic thinking, there it is. And the executing, of course, is like executing's all over the place. So he's got some in the top 50%, but they're spread all the way in. Well, the first meeting I had with him, he says, hey, I said, what do you want to do? He said, I want to be an account management executive. I said, account management executive? I said, in my experience, account managers are the guys that are all blue and ladies, they're very heavy on relationship building, but very light on strategic thinking. You don't need to be strong in strategic thinking, in my experience, to be a good account management exec. He said, what's your point? I said, well, do you have the right target role? He said, well, I think so. I said, well, let's keep talking about that. So we chatted over that a couple of sessions. He changed his target position to executive for growth and strategy, but he added while building deep relationships with customers. So he wanted to have both of them, and that's fine. So, but it was an interesting case study because he's very strategic. And when you talk to him, he has all sorts of visions for the future and things that he wants to do. And so the position, and he's not an engineer, he's not a degreed engineer, but he's got a bachelor and master's degrees. He's very technical, but he's very savvy from a business point of view as well. So he's sort of a unique breed. It fits in a really nice space there, but he is interviewing currently for positions that are more strategic than tactical, that's for sure. Oh, next slide. So the reason it's important to align the roles with the strengths is because in my experience of HR leadership for more than 30 years, if you place executives in roles that play to their strengths, they're almost always going to excel. They're going to perform better. They're going to have better engagement. They're going to be viewed as having upward mobility, and they stay longer with the company. If somebody is in a role that doesn't play to their strengths, what usually happens, we call it flame out. They come in and they're flash in the pan. They're a really strong performer. And then before you know it, in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, things start trailing off. And oftentimes they leave the company because they're just, we call it HR, a round peg in a round hole. That's what you want to be. And so if you're a square peg, you just don't fit in a round hole. And so over time, issues come. And a lot of times in HR, by the time somebody figures out, maybe I'm not in the right role. And so we go through a tool like StrengthsFinder or other tools, and have conversations about it. It's like, yeah, maybe I haven't been doing what would be the best fit for me. So people make adjustments and they get more aligned with what their strengths are, because when they're in a role that they truly enjoy and they're satisfied and fulfilled, they're almost always better performers. Okay, next slide. Okay, this is executive number 3. This is an IT executive who wanted to be a CIO. So anyway, when I met with him the first time at Starbucks, he gave me his resume and it had 3 pages, about a 1/4-inch margin on all sides. And I said, what in the world is this? He said, this is everything. I documented everything in my 25-year career. I said, really? I think that's TMI. There's way too much information on this resume. And this is not, I said, what do you want to do? He said, I want to be a CIO. I said, okay, well, let's just throw this in the trash and we're going to start all over. He said, why would you do that to me? I said, because nobody will talk to you. Nobody's got enough patience to go through 3 pages, and it was in 9.5 font, if I remember, and try to digest all of that. He said, okay, well, let me think about it. He called me back the next day. He said, okay, let's go. So we completely changed it. And I didn't want to get him upset, but I mean, it was the most impossible resume I think I've ever seen in my career. By the time he finished, though, he did a complete 180. The resume was absolutely compelling. It was using this format. Brandy has this format that we use. It's really, really executive-like, and it's very compelling when you fill out your key core competencies, your expertise. You've got a summary at the top. You've got your strategic impact, and then your experience, education, et cetera. But this format works very well for executives. I had a number of people I've worked with have said, wow, I've gotten comments from hiring managers like, wow, we really like your resume. Thank you for organizing that so effectively for us. And so it does make a difference when you have a resume that's A+. And on the next slide, this is his LinkedIn profile. So he took that same robustness straight to LinkedIn, and he said, I'm going to have the best LinkedIn profile for a CIO out on the internet. I said, really? He said, yep, you watch. So this is what he wound up with in his about section. And I think we must have met 10 times on his about section, but it's very, very strong. And I use it as an example when I'm working with other executives, even if they're not in IT, because his about section starts off at the top and he talks about like who he is. That's the first sentence. And then he talks about what he's known for. Then he talks about that he's on the board of directors. That was a big selling point for him because he's been a partner with the board. The industries that he's worked in, and he's got his certification. So he's really big on certifications, but a lot of IT executives are. And then in the 5 areas there, he took the most important areas of responsibility for a CIO. At least what he did, he went out on ChatGPT and identified the top 10 CIO LinkedIn profiles. And so he looked at that. He found out real fast his LinkedIn profile was not where it needed to be. It wasn't lined up with what the market needed and wanted. So he adjusted those 5 areas, and then he took his resume accomplishments, the top 5 or 6, and then he mapped those to those 5 areas. And so when a headhunter looks at that, number one, and he bolded the names of the areas, which adds more focus for a headhunter, because headhunters are said to spend about 25 seconds on average reading an about section. So if you got a really strong about section, what often happens is the headhunter is just going to pick up the phone if you have your phone number on LinkedIn and say, hey, just read your about section, I looked at your LinkedIn profile, I got an opening I think might be of interest to you. And that's how you get started. So anyway, this is a great A+ executive LinkedIn profile, in my opinion. Okay, number 4, Bob Wyrick. Okay, Bob is okay with using his name. He just announced here recently, in fact, it was yesterday, I saw it. He's now the managing director of international affairs at Airlines for America. He worked at American Airlines for quite some time, for more than 20 years. And what he wanted to do, he's like an airline guy. So he doesn't have the flexibility. He could work for like Amtrak, and if you want to move to trains, work for Uber if you want to go to cars. But I mean, pretty much the guys that worked in American Airlines, they're airline guys, and that's where they're comfortable, that's their lane, and that's where they have the most success. So he wanted to contact he changed the name of the company, as you can see. It's changed to Johnny's Rockets down in the third paragraph. So he showed this letter to so many people, and people said, wow, I've never seen a letter like that. How did you do that? Well, one way he did it is he's just a very good writer. He knows how to write really strong messages to executives. That's just one of his key strengths. So you'll see he introduces himself in the first paragraph, but very briefly. He doesn't say a lot. And then in the second paragraph, he talks about the innovations at this particular CEO's company. He's another airline company. I've not personally heard of it, but it's big out west. And then the third paragraph, he said that's his ask. He would like to have a conversation with him. And then the last paragraph, trying to set up a close there and get somebody to contact him. Sure enough, he sends this message on a Saturday at noon, which is generally the recommended time, between 9 and 12 on a Saturday. And very shortly thereafter, I can't remember if it was that day or Monday, the CEO contacted him and said, I'd love to meet with you. So the next time you're in town, let's set up a meeting. So he did that, and they had a 1-hour conversation. And they actually stayed in conversation for about 3 or 4 months after that. If this company had been looking to expand globally or internationally, I think Bob would have been a super candidate, but he wanted to keep his airline company domestic for an undetermined amount of time. So they agreed that the timing wasn't optimal. So anyway, but this is an example of a letter very well written to connect with C-level executives. Okay, the next success story is an operations and supply chain executive. This guy just moved to the United States 9 years ago, working for a company that was Israeli in the aerospace industry. So he had no network at all. So he had to start networking immediately. And so I told him, I said, well, what you need to do is you need to use Tom Jackson's quick job search process. So Tom is a cybersecurity director that I met 3 years ago. And he told the story to a number of different groups within the Dallas-Fort Worth area, how he went from Accenture to, I think it was called Digital Management Incorporated. That was in 2022. It took him 2 weeks to go from start to finish. And so it's basically, if you're in trouble and you've got to land a job quickly, and that was the case for this particular operations and supply chain executive, it's like, I can't think of a better way to do it. So basically what you do, I call it like it's just an absolute concentrated effort. I mean, you basically say, okay, here's the company that needs a cybersecurity director. I've found 6 companies. They've all got openings on LinkedIn. He doesn't even mess with companies that don't have openings. So you got to have an opening. And then he contacts the recruiter, contacts the hiring manager, whichever one accepts first. He makes sure that he's got both of them in his hip pocket. It's like, hey, I'm the greatest cybersecurity director in Dallas. I need to go to work for you immediately. I'm ready, willing, and able. Hire me now. And then he gets the interview with the hiring manager and continues that message. So he's very positive, but pretty assertive. And he uses rocketreach.com, which is, I've heard from many executives, that's a great way to find email addresses for executives. And so he doesn't send, LinkedIn request hiring managers aren't on LinkedIn very often. Recruiters are. And so what happens is he sends this chart. It's got a T-chart, and it has the requirements for the position, the qualifications, and then he matches all that up, sends it in, and says, you need to hire me now. So in 2 weeks, he got 6 interviews with hiring managers. He got 3 offers and started work at this digital management company 2 weeks from the day that he started his job search. So I have never known anybody that can do it faster than that. I didn't even think that it was even possible at a director level to do that, but it does work. And he is the best. He's a really nice guy. I mean, his photo if you click on the photo there, Trevor, he's quite a dignified. It's up in the upper left-hand corner up there. If you click on his name, Tom Jackson. There he is. Quite a dignified gentleman. He likes to help. So if you ever hear of him or get to chat with him, he's a great speaker, and he has a great story to tell. So that story doesn't work for everybody, but if you don't have a network, it's definitely the way to go. Okay. All right. Next success story is an organizational change management executive. And in this case, she had not interviewed for many years. In fact, I don't think she had interviewed in like 20 years, which is very common for executives because we just go from position to position because companies keep wanting us. But Tim Madden, a presenter from Executive Career Upgrades, his statement is that 70% of hiring managers know whether they want to hire you within the first 60 seconds. And also 90% of hiring managers know where they want to hire you in the first 15 minutes. And so you have to do well in interviews. And most executives, including myself, just think, oh, I can interview. I've conducted interview skills classes in my career. It's like I teach executives how to interview. It's like that's a no-brainer. I'll get the interview and I'll get the job. And so, but of course, things just aren't quite as rosy as they were back in 2022. And we're all having more challenges in getting interviews converted to offers. So anyway, I sent her these 6 steps because this is from Jay Fasaro. He wrote this book from the other side of the desk. It's one of the best in the market. And he's got these 6 interviewing steps in here. And they really work because he says of his clients, he's at Arkansas, if his clients follow these 6 steps in the sequence that they're written, 64% of them land. And I think that's true because I've sent these to many executives and non-executives even that really just don't have their head wrapped around interviewing. They just think it's a waste of time. But you have to look at it differently. And Jay's message is you basically need to script every story that you want to tell. You have to write it in advance what you're going to say in the interview. Only leave 20% to ad-lib comments because his argument is if you just go in there and just make it up as you go, it's not going to go well. So most of us know what the questions are they're going to ask us before we even go. And so it definitely helps. There's Jay Fasaro, quite dignified gentleman. He's a former finance executive. And so he wrote this book and it stood the test of time, that's for sure. His advice is very, very good. So once I gave this information to this particular organizational management, change management executive, she started getting interviews and she's more confident and she could do much, much better. So it's where we start. Okay, number 7, let's move on to number 7. That was the second IT executive. And so he'd done really well. He'd done all the work that most of these executives do. But I saw him one day and I said, so how's it going? He said, well, it's going well. I'm interviewing like 3 or 4 times a week, Larry. I said, well, how come you're not landing? He said, I have no clue. I said, well, gosh, have you been to one of the 2 free interviewing skills training? What are those? That's like, so at the bottom, you'll see the 2, Pit Crew. You want to click on that, Trevor? The Pit Crew, that is free. It's in Dallas. And so they have interviews those are panel interviews, I understand. I've not done that one. The other one is Walt Glass. That's 2-on-1. So like in my case, I interviewed a lady. I had 12 questions and then she flipped and asked me the same questions. All that's recorded. And then in Walt Glass's case, Walt gives you feedback. You know, after I got done, he said, so how you feeling there? And I said, I aced it. I did great. He said, no, you actually didn't ace it. You know, so I'm going to give you some feedback and show you what you could have done a whole lot better. It's like, wow, that's hard to believe. And so, but they know so much because they watch you, and we all do in interviews things that we just don't think about. We either talk too much, talk too little. We tell too many stories, or we don't answer the question directly, or we go down rabbit holes, and we do all sorts of things. So when you get the interview and you get the feedback and you hear all that, it basically causes behavior change, and behavior change to what is expected to actually get first place in the interview. So literally in less than 30 days after he completed, I can't recall which one he went to, but it was one of those 2. And they're both free. There's no charge. He landed a job and started back in October. All right, moving on to number 8. This is a technology executive. This is information here from Jay Fasaro again, because you remember his 4th point was to handle compensation effectively. So this executive said, hey, my future C-level boss wants me to give him some numbers. I said, well, what's he looking for? And he said, well, just toss out some ranges. And so in this case, we went with range number one. And so the reason you've got to start with salary, actually, point one there is getting the market data. So you got to get the market data first before we could even come up with the ranges. So where do you get the data? Well, when I'm working, I use data from Mercer and some of these other large consulting firms, but we're not working now. And so salary.com comes the closest that I know of the options that are online. ChatGPT, you can actually get some good insights from ChatGPT because it combines many different sources. Or if you know somebody in HR, compensation. So what I usually do when I work with executives is get all that information, kind of get a feel for where the range should be. And then I'll contact a compensation consultant that I know and say, hey, this is what I've come up with without the expensive sources that I use when I'm an HR executive. And then we calibrate and make sure that the numbers reflect the market for the location. In this case, it was Dallas. For the industry, it's technology, that sort of thing. So these are the numbers that came up with for that particular situation. Another way to do it for higher level executives is to just give them total compensation you're looking for. And I've only had one of those in my career. Brandy and Trevor, you may have had more, but those numbers get up from 500,000 to a million and above, and you can just give them one number and just say, hey, that includes base and bonus, equity, any kind of severance pay, after 1 year if I get removed for certain reasons, and then PTO and the benefits and all of that. Because in that way, once the company knows where you're targeting, they know how to shape, because all companies' compensation is different. They have different guidelines, different structures. And so in this case, you may ask for 250 to 300 base, and the bonus to be 30 to 35%, equity 35 to 50%. But then they come back and say, oh, well, we can't do equity because we don't have an equity plan. But we've been thinking about it. And so it's not a no. But they may come back and just say, well, okay, let's go. We'll go higher on base because we do base. Bonus, yeah, we'll stay high on the bonus. 35, we can do that. But on equity, we're going to have to do something. We're going to have to create something and do a one-off solution for you. So that's how that works. And then the next page is the actual letter that he wrote to his C-level boss. And so I think it's very well written, it's very measured. The name has been changed, obviously. And basically the introduction is the top paragraph. Then he gives his ranges for all the three levels of most compensation plans. And then says he's really interested in equity. He's trying to tell him, I'm really focused on equity. So if you want to go high there, I would love that. That's not what actually happened because they didn't have an equity plan. But he's basically open, and you've got to say that you're very flexible because those are just guidelines. And then the CIO, in this case, the C-level, he has to go back to the HR organization and the CEO to sell the final package. And so it turned out really well. And so that letter was written. We had it took about 2 weeks to negotiate the offer because they came in lower than what he wanted. But over time, he started at this range. So of course he wanted the highest in all three ranges, and they came back more in the lower. But we came to a meeting of the minds, and in the end, he was very, very pleased with the final offer. And number 9, this is the last one. So we're going to come in within 40 minutes here. So this is the last one. This was a data analytics executive. And this is when she basically, we love you. We want to bring you on board, but we don't have a headcount. And so she called me. She says, wow, I've done all this work and now I can't join the company. It's like, oh, yes, you can. You can come in as a consultant. I think 3 or 4 more just since her working with her. You can come in as a 1099 contractor. You can be a 1099 and work for yourself, your own LLC, or you can be a 1099 through an executive search firm or a senior level staffing agency, or you can come in as a consultant. So a lot of times consultants work for executive search firms and they're W-2 employees of the consulting firm, the search firm. And then you work on a contract to the company. That's common for interim positions. Or you can be a consultant and have a statement of work at the end and it says, I agree to be a consultant for 9 months or 12 months. A lot of times they're longer than 12 months. And here are the accomplishments that I plan to make in my position. And so that's hammered out between the company and the new employee. So and she finally got over the line. In her case, she came in as a 1099, and she is going to be converted to a W-2 employee this year. So my wrap-up slide here is, if you were to do all the work that these 9 executives have done, that I've told you about, you're going to have these 9 attributes. You're going to have a clear direction. You're going to have aligned target roles and strengths. You're going to have strong branded assets. You're going to have certainty about how to contact hiring managers. You're going to have a thriving network. You're going to get in to see hiring managers and have effective interviews. You're going to get through the process, be the first choice. You're going to get an offer. You're going to negotiate a great offer, and you're going to get hired. And so that's my story. And, we think, given that there's so much involved in this, it is very, very helpful for you to work with a coach to help you get through all of these different steps, because there's a lot involved and none of it is easy. But I try to work with people and try to go guide through the process so that at the end you get what you accomplish your objective. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Larry. That was incredible. Do you guys have some questions for Larry that you'd like to get answered today?
Question per se, but Larry, this is really great. I love all of your examples really to drive it home. And I do all of the landing interviews, and I can definitely say that the majority of these things come up almost every single time. Obviously, not all together for each person, but over the years, the same things have been said about the value of EIT. I think in particular, hold on, I was just gonna. I did a quick snapshot so I could be more articulate here. I think having the clear direction piece, the strong brand, a thriving network, and understanding how to get from always being the second choice to the first choice are probably the key things that I hear that people executives needed to learn. Obviously, they needed to have strengthology help by giving them a language to put to their strengths so they can encapsulate it into their brand. So almost every little piece helped, and it differentiated EIT from some of the other executive search assistant groups. So I love that this is all put together in a nice model. So thank you, Brandy, Trevor, and Larry for doing all of this. It makes it very organized and systematic, and I think it's right on target.
Thank you, Jenny. What else? Any other questions? David, Richard, JoBeth, Milo, Bruce, Shannon, Mark?
I have a question. How do you get started? I ended my contract with my friends at KPMG recently. I have some other things in the works, but how do you guys get started with you and schedule an appointment and those kind of things?
Yeah, I can help and take that one. So, I mean, obviously on the screen you see our whole playbook, and the first step, we do a benchmark assessment, and that helps all of us start a conversation around, all right, where are you at? Where are you strong? Where are we needing to bridge the gaps? And if you've got your phone, you can scan a QR code, or you can just go to executivepivots.com. Sorry, I've got an extra dot on the screen there. It is not executive.pivots.com. It is just executivepivots.com. And that will that'll let you take the complimentary assessment. And that, I mean, for anyone on this call, if you would just like even just the insights that come from that assessment, take it. It's there for everyone. And after you take the assessment, you'll get a copy of the full PDF report. We'll get a copy of that. There is a calendar booking link that's in there as well. If I see you take the assessment and you don't book something on one of our calendars, I'll reach out to you and I'll check and say, all right, what do you want to chat? Do you want to go further? Do you want to look into different programs or fits or not fits, or what do you want to do? And if there's a time that you want on a calendar, then I'll help even give you Calendly type booking calendar links for us, and we can have multiple of us on a call and go through the program end to end and talk about what version of all of our different designs or programs actually fit what you need and want.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're most welcome. Any other questions?
Randy and Trevor, I will say what Larry has said, it rings true. I had the opportunity to work with Larry doing my executive spotlight presentation, and it changed the way I answered a lot of my interview questions. So bouncing stuff off of somebody, whether it be a coach or another person or an expert in interviewing or whatever, does help move you along in this process.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, Milo. I mean, I came from a pretty strong sporting background, Division I football and all that, and so I leaned in and learned and heard of a lot of different sports folks, and even one of the greatest sports guys of all time, Michael Jordan. There wasn't really even one time in his life he didn't have a coach, and he could run the team, he could coach, he knows how to coach himself, and he still never didn't have a coach. Because when we're emotionally involved or when we're personally involved, it changes the entire equation. And we need somebody that can even just reiterate what we already know to help us actually produce the results.
Yeah, and the more important it is, whatever it is, the more important it is to have somebody next to you riding along side by side, giving you the support to enable you to perform at a high level to get the job done. I do a lot of executive leadership coaching. And, as an executive, you have a very important job. There's a lot of people depending on you and there's a lot of pressure. But to have somebody in your corner and helping you see what you need to see and provide the emotional support, the intellectual support, the ideas, the bringing in additional experts when you need help, just somebody that's looking out for you is super helpful.
Yeah. Anyone on the call ever felt like you're on a flippin' island? You're just on your island doing it. No one gets it.
Yep. All right. Let's keep moving. We got a few more things to show you before you go.
Yeah, so that you guys can connect with us, this session and many others we do have out there as resources, and we really try to do them just like Larry did today. Larry, thank you again, and I really feel like, we showcased some information, but I really do feel like you gave people something that if they wanted to take and just go apply what you covered today, they actually have tools in their hand. And so thank you for that. Thank you for making it so tangible and usable. And that's what we try to do anytime we do these webinars. And we do put them out on YouTube. So please do go subscribe or share to anyone that might benefit from some of the the free resources that we put out there. And we really try to talk through some of the depths of these different layers and those different zones that we covered today. And then if you're not already following us or connected with us on LinkedIn, please do connect with us there. We put job postings out there, I mean, on the daily. So any of these things that come through our network, massive networks that we can just share and lob into your lap, we're trying to do that too. And again, this is just the culture and the nature of us and our programs and who we are. This isn't just a group that's only sharing for anybody that's a coached, signed up client. This is for everybody. So just come follow us, and we'll keep giving you guys resources as much as we can, and really just trying to help and have it not be so hard and not be on that island. You can have some people that have your back with you. If you want to connect directly with Larry or myself, we're perfectly easily findable on LinkedIn as well. Gave you a few QR codes to help that. And then we've got our next session in the works. I'll share that with you here in just a second. But if you have some ideas, if you have your phone on you, or you have some thoughts, or you have a pain point that you're like, this webinar was amazing, Larry crushed it, I appreciate it, I would love to hear more about this solution. And how do I overcome this? Like Larry said in some of his early slides, what are those things ringing through in your head that you would love to communicate to us, that you would love a webinar and a session on? We'll bring it to you. We'll find one of the folks that are in the organization in that executive bench that would have your back and be part of your support group, and we'll bring them in and have them speak on their depth and detailed expertise. Just like the next one coming up that we do have planned and scheduled. So we're going to have Justin McCullough. He is our CEO of Onyx Unlocks, and he runs and heads up all things strategy, all things big picture, and all things branding and marketing. And he is going to dive into some pretty incredible depths. We have about 3 different topics queued up for him that he is really excited and chomping at the bit to know which way he gets to run and sprint and deliver. So again, if you have any feedback on exactly what you want to hear, you might even be able to influence what he does bring to you on Thursday, April 9th, 11 a.m. We'll do a session just like this. We'll put it on the executivepivots.com/events page. We'll share some info on the LinkedIn page as well. But that is coming up on Thursday, April 9th.
Thank you very much.
Any final thoughts, any final questions? We have a perfect 60 seconds remaining, and we're happy to help in those final 60 seconds.
Thank you for coming. If you guys have additional questions and you want to take them offline, just reach out to us. So we'll schedule some time with you.